There was a time in the late 1990s when the internet had basically no rules. Anyone could post anything online and anyone else could stumble across it. Some people used that freedom to build websites that people are still talking about today. Not because they were enjoyable, but because once you saw what was on them, you simply could not forget it. This video covers 5 of those sites, and this is only part 1. The first site is rotten.com, and the story behind it is pretty straightforward. A software engineer named Thomas Dell, who had worked at both Apple and Netscape, wrote a small program to find single-word domain names that nobody had claimed yet. After coming across the word rotten, he registered the domain in 1996. His original plan was simple: to share funny pictures online. But the site soon became something very different. The website was extremely simple. The homepage contained only a long list of text links and brief descriptions. Visitors never knew exactly what they were about to see until they clicked. The descriptions were written vaguely on purpose, sometimes even written to sound like something completely harmless. You would click a link thinking it was some kind of news story, and a photograph would start loading slowly on your screen. Internet at the time was very slow, so the image would appear from top to bottom, revealing itself bit by bit. By the time people understood what they had clicked on, the images were already on their screen. The content included car crash victims, autopsy photos, crime scenes, severe injuries, and unusual medical conditions. Everything on the site was real. The content was submitted by visitors, and anyone with an internet connection could access it. Dell never tried to hide what the site was. He said publicly that Rotten existed as a protest against a law called the Communications Decency Act, which the US government passed in 1996, and which tried to limit what kind of content could be posted online. Dell argued that the images on Rotten were no different from those found in medical books or court files. They were just easier for the public to access. The FBI and Scotland Yard both investigated the site, but Rotten stayed online. Despite receiving regular death threats, Dell continued to run it. For years, Rotten was known mainly within internet circles. That changed in 1997 when Howard Stern mentioned the site on his radio show. Almost overnight, traffic surged from around 4,500 visitors a day to 50,000. The site continued to grow over the next few years. By the early 2000s, around 200,000 people were visiting Rotten every day. The audience had become so large that Dell was able to leave his other work behind and focus on running the site full-time. For a large number of teenagers who were discovering the internet for the first time in those years, Rotten was the first place they ever encountered images, showing what violence and death actually look like. The way it usually happened was that someone at school would mention the site by name. You would search for it at home out of curiosity. You would click one of those plain text links, and whatever came up next would stick with you for a long time. The site slowly faded after 2009. It published its last post in early 2012 and was gone completely by around 2017. But the idea behind Rotten did not disappear with it. By then, its influence had already spread across the internet. Ogrish launched around the year 2000, and the one thing that made it different from Rotten was video. Rotten had photographs. Ogrish had actual moving footage. As internet speeds got better and more people got broadband at home, that difference started to matter in a big way. Looking at a disturbing photo is one thing. Watching real video of the same thing is something else entirely. The site called itself uncensored news from around the world, and during the Iraq War years, that actually meant something. Ogrish hosted raw footage from the conflict that mainstream TV channels refused to show. Video filmed by soldiers, journalists, and ordinary people that gave viewers a completely unfiltered look at what was really going on. For anyone who wanted to see beyond what the nightly news was choosing to show them, Ogrish was one of the very few places on the internet that would take you there. It also had active forums where regular users came back every single day to talk and argue about what they had watched, which gave the site a real community feeling that Rotten never had. The site even released physical magazines at various points, which are considered pretty rare today. In 2006, everything changed. On Halloween of that year, anyone who visited the Ogrish website was automatically sent to a brand new platform called LiveLeak. built by some of the same people. LiveLeak kept the extreme content, but presented itself more as a citizen journalism platform. It became known worldwide in 2007 when it hosted leaked footage of the execution of Saddam Hussein, footage that got referenced in news coverage at government level across multiple countries. LiveLeak ran until May 2021, then shut down and sent visitors to a new platform called ItemFix, which banned graphic content completely. The whole journey from Ogrish to ItemFix took roughly 2 decades. Stile Project launched on October 3rd, 1999, built by a Canadian teenager who went by the name J. Stile. Where Rotten was a serious archive and Ogrish presented itself as news coverage, Stile Project had a completely different feel. It was chaotic and messy on purpose. The site threw together extreme gore, adult content, shock videos, crude humor, and early internet memes all on the same pages, with no real structure to any of it. Visiting it felt like someone had collected every disturbing thing they could find on the internet and just dumped all of it onto one page at once. At its busiest, the site was pulling in around 500,000 visitors every day. It won a Reel Award in 2000, a Webby Award in the Weird category. A lot of the link sharing behavior and online prank culture that spread across the internet during the 2000s traces back to things Stile Project was doing in those early years. But the moment that defined the site forever came in 2001, when a video appeared showing a man in South Korea doing something deeply disturbing to a cat, ending with him consuming it as food, all while Bohemian Rhapsody played over the footage the entire time. The reaction was unlike anything that had happened around a shock website before. PETA pushed for a government investigation under animal cruelty laws. Major news outlets covered it widely. People who had spent years watching extreme content and thought nothing could get to them anymore found this particular video genuinely hard to shake. Stile received death threats constantly, and the situation started affecting people around him in his personal life. His argument was that the video pointed out hypocrisy in the way people think about animals and meat, but that explanation did not change how most people felt about watching it. Even within the shock site community itself, this clip became the line that most people agreed went too far. The site eventually sold around 2010 and faded out after that. By 2007, the era of visiting a dedicated shock website to find disturbing content was being replaced by something different. A single short video clip, shared the right way across platforms that already had huge audiences, could reach far more people than any website archive ever had. That is exactly what happened with the clip known as 2 Girls, 1 Cup. It was actually a 1-minute trailer for a Brazilian adult film called Hungry Bitches, made by a company called MFX Media. The clip showed 2 women engaged in extreme fetish content involving bodily waste, and the whole thing played out with a soft romantic instrumental called Lover's Theme from a 1978 film playing quietly underneath it. The contrast between the gentle music and what was actually happening on screen made it feel genuinely strange beyond just being shocking. It got so much attention that someone even built a dedicated website around it afterwards. The clip spread through forums and direct link sharing, but what pushed it to a completely different scale was something that had never really happened around this kind of content before. People started filming themselves watching it for the first time and posting those videos online. Friends filming friends, people filming their parents, strangers filming strangers. The reactions, covering eyes, gagging, laughing out of pure discomfort, walking away from the screen, became their own form of entertainment completely separate from the original clip. People who had zero interest in seeing the actual footage would happily watch other people's reactions to it for minutes at a time. It turned into a prank that spread everywhere, and the original performers stayed completely anonymous throughout the whole thing. What 2 Girls, 1 Cup showed was that extreme content no longer needed a dedicated home. It just needed a shareable link, and a large enough audience already gathered somewhere online. When it comes to the single most remembered piece of shock content from that entire era of internet history, it was not a video. It was one photograph, and it had been circulating since 1997. The image known as Goatse showed a man photographed from behind, bent forward, using both hands to stretch himself open in a way that looked physically impossible to most people who saw it. The man was later identified as someone named Kirk Johnson, who was involved in extreme fetish communities online. In 1999, someone from a hacker group registered a dedicated domain and hosted the image there with absolutely nothing else on the page. Just the single photograph and nothing surrounding it. That setup made it a near-perfect prank tool. You could post the link anywhere on the internet, describe it as something completely harmless, like a software download or a helpful answer to someone's question, and whoever clicked it would see something they had zero preparation for. The same group of people had already been sending the image into family-friendly chat rooms and online communities before the dedicated website even existed, and having one permanent link made the whole thing much easier to spread. It became the original version of the disguised prank link that tricks you into seeing something unexpected. Years before rickrolling became something people did widely, Goatse had already invented the exact same mechanic of making a link look completely innocent and delivering something totally different on the other side. It spread so far into mainstream culture that a parody of it was accidentally shown on live BBC television during coverage of the 2012 Olympics logo reveal. Kirk Johnson was publicly identified around 2012. Reports from online communities in the years after suggested he had developed serious health complications and eventually passed away, though none of this was ever officially confirmed. The website itself changed hands several times over the years. But by that point, the photograph had already done what it was going to do. It had reached millions of people and left a permanent mark on how internet culture developed, showing that a single image shared the right way could travel anywhere and stay in people's memories for a very long time. These 5 sites all existed during a period when the internet was growing faster than anyone's ability to shape or manage it. That period ended. Platforms became larger, content rules became stricter, and the truly unfiltered corners of the web either transformed into something more controlled or vanished entirely. But the people who encountered any of this content during those years, whether they went looking for it or completely stumbled into it, still carry those memories, because all of it was built to be exactly the kind of thing you cannot simply forget. And this is only part 1.